Welcome once again, my friends, and thank you for stopping by to listen to an old storyteller. Today we have a story from England, and the title of this story is The Lambton Worm. Long ago, in the days when the Lambtons were so brave and powerful that they feared neither God nor man, the young heir of Lambton went a-fishing in the River Wear on a Sunday, according to his profane custom, and, meeting with no success, he vented his ill luck in curses loud and deep, to the horror of the pious folk who passed him on their way to Mass. At last he felt a sharp tug at his line, and joyfully began to draw the expected fish to land. But to his surprise and disappointment, he found he had hooked a worm of disgusting appearance, which he hastily bore off his hook, and threw into a neighboring well. He continued to fish, and presently a stranger of venerable appearance drew near. "What sport?" quoth he. "Why, I think I've catched the devil," was young Lambton's reply. "Go and look in yonder well." The stranger looked at the worm long and silently. "I never saw the like of it before," he said gravely. "It betokens no good. Why, it has 9 holes on each side of its mouth." Lambton laughed and went on with his fishing, and presently the stranger passed on his way. Left in the well, the worm throve space. It grew and grew until the well became too small to hold it, and then it crawled forth to seek a new resting place. As the old chapbook version of the story says, "Betook itself to Wear's cool stream, nursed by the floods so fast it grew till, with 9 circling folds, a neighboring hill it grasped." It soon found a stone crag in the River Wear, round which it lay coiled during the daytime, and in the evening wrapped itself 9 times round the foot of a neighboring hillock, which is called to this day the Worm Hill. It now became the terror of the whole countryside, laying waste the land, injuring the cattle, frightening the villagers, devouring the lambs, and sucking the milk from the cows. Meanwhile, young Lambton had repented him of his evil like, and, having bathed himself in holy water and made the signs of the cross, he joined the Crusaders and went off to distant lands. He was therefore quite in ignorance of the fact that the worm he had caught was devastating the country round his home, and laying waste the land of his forefathers. His father, the old lord, bowed down by grief and sorrow, lived still at Lambton Hall. In one of its hills the worm held sway. The household met in council, and an old retainer, far advanced in years, suggested that the large trough belonging to the courtyard should be filled with milk to propitiate appeased, and from that day forth it demanded a daily supply of milk, or 9 kai, and if refused it would plunder and slay without mercy, and tear up the trees in the park with violent lashing of its tail. Of course, such a state of things could not be borne. Many a gallant knight set out to slay the worm, but each one as he came was vanquished, loss of life or limb. For no sooner was the worm cut asunder than it immediately joined itself together again and renewed the attack. So after a time it was left in undisputed possession of its hill. Years passed by, and Lambton returned from the holy wars. He had fought the Saracen foe, trodden on Calvary's hill, and imprinted a kiss on his Saviour's grave. Full of horror, he listened to the story of the worm's depredations, and with eyes full of tears beheld the broad lands of his ancestors now made barren as a wilderness. After tenderly greeting his father, who had long thought him dead and was overjoyed at his return, he crossed the river to see for himself the monster who had wrought such devastation, and which the boldest knight had failed to kill. By the struggling light of early morn it lies in its resting place, its Argus head on the waters clear, the rock in its embrace. Next morning he consulted a Sibyl, a wise woman, who consented to help him to overcome the worm. But before giving his advice, the knight, she added, must take a solemn vow that, if successful, he would offer as a sacrifice the first living thing he met after the combat. Should he fail to do this, his race would be accursed, and the lords of Lambton for 9 generations would never die in their beds. Lambton agreed to the conditions, and the Sibyl then bade him put on his coat of mail, well studded with spear blades, take his trustiest sword in his hand, and boldly attack the worm on the water before it hied from the weir to the hall to partake of his morning meal. Lambton instructed his aged father that if he vanquished the worm, he was to blow 3 blasts on his horn. This would be the signal to let loose his favorite greyhound, which would immediately fly to the sound of the horn, and would thus be the first thing to meet him and be slain, according to the Sibyls and the knight. Having made the solemn vow in Brigford Chapel, armed himself cap a pie, and started out to the fray. He took his stand on the rock with his sword in his hand, and when the worm saw him, it left the hill round which it was worm. The knight struck at it again and again with all his might as it closed on him with its deadly embrace, coiling round him and trying to strangle him in its folds. But now the spear blades upon his coat did their work, for the closer the worm pressed, the more frightfully was it cut through and through by their sharp edges. Even so, the several pieces quickly united again, and the fierce combat went on till the weir ran red with blood. Then Lambton called upon the saints to help him, stepped to the river, raised his sword, and with a mighty stroke cut the worm in two. This time the pieces were carried away by the stream, and the vanquished monster was unable to reunite himself. Thrice does he kiss the cross round his neck, thrice to the saints he prays, then draws his sword so sharp and long, nor to the combat he delays. For anon unto Weir's strong stream he goes, his sword direct he wields. The monster's gore thick crimson the weir, and nor wound nor cut now heals. For the Weir's strong stream fast floods away the parts that are cut in twain, but the razored coat that the worm enfolds, or the sword strokes, made amain. The victorious knight blew 3 loud blasts on his horn as a signal for the greyhound to be released, but his aged father was so filled with rapture at hearing the tidings of his son's victory that in his impatience to embrace him he forgot everything else, and in the excitement of the moment ran forward to meet him. Now was Lambton face to face with a dreadful alternative. Either he must become a parricide, or bring the curse upon his descendants. He again blew his horn, and the greyhound bounded forward, and was sacrificed with the still reeking sword. But it was killed in vain, for the vow had stipulated that the first creature he met should die, and so the curse fell upon the Lambtons, and the Sibyl's prediction was fulfilled.
Thank you once again for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this story, please press that like button. Also, please help an old storyteller out by subscribing to my channel. The next story will be posted in a few days, so until then, may your story continue to be a good one.